Imagine a world where the stock market is practically cheering because global shipping routes are collapsing.
Yeah, it's completely backward.
Right. And, where the most advanced AI on Earth might just fail because the sun went down a few hours too late. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's good to be here.
So it is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. We're pulling today's source material from the 4 p.m. news brief of the Daily Tech Reader. And our mission today is to unpack this massive, almost dizzying global paradox.
It really is a paradox. I mean, we're looking at a world experiencing this massive digital and AI explosion alongside some, temporary economic relief.
Right.
But at the exact same time, we're slamming into severe, immovable physical constraints.
Like extreme heat.
Exactly. Extreme heat, energy limits, and escalating geopolitical conflict.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand where we are right now, we kind of have to look at how the digital world and the physical world are basically arm wrestling. Let's start with the economic data.
Yeah, let's look at the numbers.
Because at first glance, it looks like a major win. U.S. producer prices fell 0.3% in June.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's the largest monthly decline we've seen in 14 months. Food prices dropped broadly, across grains and vegetables, and energy product prices plummeted an impressive 6.4%.
Right.
So if you're just skimming the headlines, you'd think, oh, great, the global economy just solved its inflation problem.
What's fascinating here is what happens when you look at the actual mechanism driving those numbers, because the underlying pressure never actually went away.
What do you mean?
Well, that 6.4% drop in energy prices, it was almost entirely due to a temporary U.S.-Iran ceasefire that happened in June.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it gave the markets this fleeting moment of relief. But if you look at core producer inflation, which strips out those volatile categories like food and energy, it actually increased modestly last month.
So celebrating that 0.3% drop feels a bit like, I don't know, taking an aspirin for a broken arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like looking at a boiler that's about to explode and being thrilled that a pressure valve just released a tiny puff of steam.
That's a great way to put it. The valve releasing steam doesn't mean the boiler is fixed.
Right. The fire underneath, which is the structural geopolitical fracture, is still raging. And that temporary ceasefire is already over.
It is over. And the mechanics of the situation in the Gulf have just rapidly deteriorated.
Now, real quick, before we get into the details of that renewed conflict, we need to make something very clear to you listening.
Yes, absolutely.
When we discuss international relations and geopolitical conflict on this deep dive, we are not taking any sides. We are not endorsing any political viewpoints, domestic or foreign.
Right.
We're simply acting as an impartial lens, reporting the facts exactly as they are laid out in our source material. Our goal is strictly to help you understand the events impacting the global supply chain.
Exactly. And looking mechanically at that supply chain, the U.S. has resumed strikes against Iranian coastal defenses and missile capabilities. And Iran has responded by publicly declaring this conflict an existential struggle. And they're backing up that language with very real threats to choke off regional energy routes.
We're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, right? Which is, barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point?
Yeah, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait near Yemen, which acts as the critical bottleneck leading to the Suez Canal.
The brief notes that Gulf oil exports are already below half of their pre-war levels.
It's staggering.
I mean, half the oil from one of the most energy-dense regions on the planet is just entirely off the board.
Which forces massive container ships to divert all the way around the continent of Africa just to reach Europe. And that adds weeks of transit time and, millions in fuel costs per trip.
Right. And the U.S. is warning of further infrastructure targeting, and European aviation warnings are up across the Gulf. Oil importing economies are basically scrambling right now, preparing for fuel and transportation costs to spike again.
Yeah, they are.
But that brings us to a massive contradiction, like a logical puzzle. If global energy routes are under this kind of existential threat, and Gulf exports are sliced in half, why in the world are oil prices dropping today?
Right. It seems completely backward.
The source material shows Brent crude trading near $84 and U.S. crude moved below $79. That feels completely upside down.
It does, but it reveals something profound about market psychology and also physical adaptation.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, first, the psychology. After months and months of extreme volatility, the markets are essentially suffering from headline fatigue.
Headline fatigue.
Yeah. Investors are just becoming less reactive to individual conflict headlines because panic requires a massive amount of sustained energy, and the markets simply cannot sustain it forever.
But they can't just ignore a massive drop in oil supply purely out of psychological exhaustion.
Oh, they aren't ignoring it. They are adapting. American crude inventories fell less than analysts expected, which signals to the market that immediate domestic supply is actually manageable.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Gulf governments aren't just sitting still while the waterways are threatened. They are actively accelerating the construction of overland pipelines and deep-water ports specifically designed to bypass the Strait of Hormuz entirely.
Wait, so they are literally rerouting the physical geography of their energy distribution to get around a geopolitical choke point.
Exactly. That physical workaround is keeping the markets somewhat insulated.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture? Because we have this cautious, almost fragile balance in the markets.
Yeah.
We have the U.S. dealing with inflation risks, Europe bracing for transit spikes, and we also have to factor in China. The brief notes, China's economy only grew 4.3% during the second quarter.
Which was heavily dragged down by weak domestic demand and a continuing decline in property investment.
It paints a picture of a global economy that is resilient, but limping.
Yeah.
Everyone is trying to find physical workarounds just to keep the lights on and the goods moving.
And that theme of massive physical infrastructure investment is the perfect bridge to the biggest technology story of the day.
Right, the AI boom.
Because while the traditional energy sector is trying to build pipes around bottlenecks, the tech sector is leaning into the most aggressive physical build-out in human history to support this AI boom.
Let's dive into that AI build-out because the statistics here are just mind-blowing. Let's start with ASML. If you aren't familiar, ASML is basically the wizard behind the curtain for the entire tech world.
They really are.
They are the only global supplier of extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, lithography systems. You physically cannot manufacture the world's most advanced computer chips without their machines.
And to understand the scale of what ASML does, you have to understand the mechanism of EUV. We are talking about manipulating light at the atomic level.
It's insane.
Standard computer chips are printed using light, sort of like a photograph. But as transistors have shrunk down to the size of a few atoms, standard light waves are simply too thick to draw the lines. It would be like trying to paint a microscopic portrait with a broad house painting brush. EUV is the microscopic pen.
And getting that pen to work sounds like science fiction. I mean, you have to vaporize microscopic droplets of molten tin with high-powered lasers just to generate that specific wavelength of light.
Right. And ASML just raised its annual sales forecast because they are expanding their manufacturing capacity for these machines by an estimated 30% annually for the next 2 years.
Wow, 30%.
Yeah, and their expanded EUV capacity is fully booked through 2027. They literally cannot build these massive machines fast enough to satisfy the demand from chip makers like TSMC, Samsung, and Intel.
And it goes beyond standard EUV, too. Intel is transitioning to ASML's next-generation high-NA equipment. That stands for high numerical aperture.
Right, the really cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah, they're basically building vastly larger, more complex mirrors to capture and focus that extreme light at even steeper angles, allowing them to print even smaller, denser circuits. And Elon Musk's planned Terafab project is also expected to rely on this manufacturing equipment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the defining microtrend in AI right now is vertical integration. It is no longer just a software story.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting. When you and I hear AI, we usually think of a chatbot on our phone or some cloud-based software that just exists in the ether.
Exactly, it feels invisible.
But the underlying reality is a story of copper, massive electrical transformers, and sprawling data centers. It reminds me of the 19th century railroad barons.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Back then, to win the transportation race, you couldn't just build a really fast train engine. If you didn't own the tracks, you couldn't guarantee your route. If you didn't own the steel mills, you couldn't build the tracks cheaply. If you didn't own the coal mines, your train couldn't move at all.
The modern tech giants are realizing the exact same thing. They can't just build the AI model, the train. They have to control the entire physical stack.
Right down to the optical networking. Look at the data on Tower Semiconductor. They're making a $3 billion expansion in Japan specifically for silicon photonics.
Silicon photonics is brilliant. because it addresses a massive physical bottleneck, which is heat and resistance.
Right, because normal wires get too hot.
Yes. Moving data between computing systems using traditional electrical connections over copper wire generates an incredible amount of heat, and it takes a lot of energy. Silicon photonics uses light-like actual lasers to move data over fiber optics directly integrated into the chips.
Which is vastly faster.
Faster and drastically reduces the energy load.
Which is critical because the virtual world requires a shockingly large physical footprint. These AI giants are designing custom chips, securing light-based networking, building physical data centers, and in some cases, openly pledging to fund the power generation to keep the whole thing running. They are embedding themselves into the physical electrical grid.
And this brings us to the most brutal irony of our current moment. All of these AI data centers require massive, unprecedented amounts of power to run, and crucially, to cool. They generate staggering amounts of thermal energy, and they demand this intense cooling right at the exact moment that the physical world outside those data centers is baking.
It's the environmental reality colliding head-on with technological ambition. The weather report in today's brief is grim. The Southwest is seeing persistent extreme temperatures, with desert locations sitting at or above 110 degrees.
It's brutal.
And the West Coast is seeing coastal communities stay somewhat mild, but the inland valleys are enduring dangerous, sustained heat. Plus, the central U.S. is baking across the plains while simultaneously getting battered by localized hail and flooding.
This extreme heat isn't just a weather anomaly to complain about. It is currently the country's most immediate public health concern. And the brief highlights a very specific, often overlooked danger, which is warm nights.
I would always assume the afternoon peak heat was the real killer, but the data here flags the nighttime temperatures as the major threat. I'm guessing that's because human physiology literally never gets a chance to hit the reset button.
Your intuition is spot on. During a heat wave, your body works incredibly hard to regulate its internal temperature.
Sweating and all that.
Right. It utilizes vasodilation, so pumping blood out toward your skin to release heat and sweating. But that puts a massive strain on your heart.
Oh, I see.
If the ambient temperature doesn't drop sufficiently at night, your body never enters a cooling off period. The baseline cardiovascular stress never resets. It compounds day after day, leading directly to heat exhaustion and cardiovascular failure.
That is terrifying.
Older adults, children, outdoor workers, and people without dependable access to air conditioning are incredibly vulnerable right now.
It's a striking, almost humbling contrast to everything we just talked about. In one section of our source material, we read about NASA satellites monitoring complex atmospheric changes and AI accelerating genomic precision medicine.
Yeah.
We possess all this godlike technology. But to survive today, the guidance is beautifully simple, completely low-tech, and deeply human. Drink water, find a cooling facility, and stay out of the afternoon sun.
And check on your isolated neighbors. All the silicon photonics and extreme ultraviolet lithography in the world cannot replace the simple act of walking next door to make sure an elderly neighbor has a working fan and a glass of ice water.
It pulls you right back down to earth. And that brings up a glaring vulnerability. If algorithms don't need a fan and a glass of ice water, where does that leave human workers in an era increasingly dominated by AI and automation?
Interestingly, the brief notes that employers are actively hunting for human judgment. AI is continuing to change individual tasks, not entirely replace complete occupations.
So it's functioning as a tool, not a substitute.
Exactly. Employers don't just want someone who can use a coding assistant. They expect workers to understand how AI fits into practical physical workflows.
The strongest career advantage right now doesn't belong to the person who can write the best prompt. It belongs to the person who can connect that software output with physical infrastructure, operational needs, and accountable human judgment.
Yes. A great example highlighted in the brief is cybersecurity. During periods of high international tension, like the escalating conflict in the Gulf, cybersecurity expertise becomes exponentially more valuable.
Because you need human intuition to secure hospitals, electrical grids, and regional power systems from threat actors. You need human developers to take responsibility for final software quality. You need someone who is accountable when things go wrong. Algorithms don't possess accountability, they only possess outputs.
Human beings provide the context, the ethics, and the final stamp of operational reality.
And human beings provide unscripted tension. The absolute best proof of the enduring human element in this brief comes from the cultural sphere.
Oh, the game.
Yes. Right now, in an enclosed stadium in Atlanta, safely shielded from the thunderstorms outside, The World Cup semifinal is taking place. England versus Argentina.
England is trying to reach their first men's World Cup final since 1966, and Argentina is fighting for consecutive championships.
As of this brief, it is halftime, and the score is 0-0. The match is incredibly physical, tightly organized, and extremely cautious.
Nobody wants to make the fatal mistake.
Exactly. England is pressing aggressively to disrupt Argentina's rhythm, while Lionel Messi and Enzo Fernandez are desperately trying to work the ball through that midfield pressure. It's foul after foul. It's a grinder. Whoever survives advances to play Spain on Sunday after Spain took down France 2-0.
This raises an important question. In a world where AI can generate a synthetic movie, write a song, or instantly summarize complex geopolitical data, why do live sports, and for that matter, long-form conversations like these deep dives, remain so culturally powerful?
Because you can't fake the unknown.
But tension is real, and crucially, it is shared. When you watch that match or when you listen to a conversation unfold, you are participating in a moment where the outcome hasn't been written yet. No AI algorithm can analyze the first half of that soccer game and deliver the final ending early to you with absolute certainty. The human drama, the physical exhaustion of the players, the collective anxiety of millions of fans watching, that cannot be automated.
It's the ultimate unscripted reality, and it's a perfect synthesis of what today, Wednesday, July 15, 2026, really looks like.
Yeah.
It is a day defined by cautious adaptation. We have a world trying to navigate temporary inflation relief, mitigating severe geopolitical threats by literally building new physical routes around danger.
Yeah.
We have a tech sector pushing the absolute boundaries of what is physically possible with AI, bending light at the atomic level just to compute faster. And we were doing all of this while trying to survive the extreme physical heat of our own planet.
We are adapting step by step, wire by wire, and pipeline by pipeline.
So what does this mean for you, listening right now? The ultimate takeaway from today's deep dive is this. In a world that is completely obsessed with AI and digital capability, your greatest asset isn't just knowing the technology. Your greatest asset is your ability to tie that technology back to physical, real-world operations.
Your human reliability.
Yes. Whether you are checking on a neighbor during a dangerous heat wave, providing cybersecurity intuition for a vulnerable hospital, or just feeling the collective tension of a World Cup match, the physical human element is the anchor that holds all this digital ambition together.
It is the foundation that everything else rests upon.
But I want to leave you with a thought that builds on everything we've unpacked today. We talked about how these massive AI companies are now openly pledging to pay for regional power grids.
Right.
They are building their own physical data centers. They are vertically integrating everything from the raw silicon manufacturing up to the energy generation itself. If they control the advanced chips, the optical networks, the physical infrastructure, and the electricity that powers our daily lives, if they control all of that, at what point do these tech giants stop being traditional software companies and start functioning more like sovereign utility states that run the underlying infrastructure of society?
If they own the foundation, they ultimately make the rules for how society operates.
It is something to chew on as you watch these tech empires expand their physical footprint across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us for today's deep dive. Stay cool out there, remember to drink plenty of water, and keep questioning the world around you. We'll see you next time.